I'd like to think I haven't been too hard on my coaches. I've always sort of done what I've said, what I've been told, and I've always had a pretty solid work ethic and manners and all that sort of stuff from a pretty young age. I feel like my parents really instilled that in me. But yeah, there was some fiery ones early days in Adelaide, and probably my dad was the most fiery one, to be honest. Everyone that's been involved, but yeah, my dad, he was very passionate, wore his heart on his sleeve, and I owe really the world to my parents. I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for them.
Hey folks, before we start today's episode, a big shout out to our two sponsors, Rackets and Strings and also Southern Slugs. Rackets and Strings are South Australia's biggest tennis store. They've got two stores at Mile End and a brand new one that's just opened down at Summerton Park. That's Unit 2, 11 Oaklands Road, so head on down there. They've got lots of great tennis gear for sale. And also a shout out to Southern Slugs, Pete Oldfield and the gang there. They've got a wonderful event happening up there in Phuket in Thailand in December. That's a 5-day event. There's the over 35s, that's the men, the slugs, and the open age women's, which is the dingoes. So get involved in that. Go to the Southern Slugs Facebook page to find out more details, but should be a lot of fun. Lukey Saville, welcome to Sports Legends with Bevo for the first time. Great to have you on, mate.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys. Very excited.
Now, obviously, the French Open's just started only yesterday, actually. I think we had Kokkinakis playing last night, and he had a great win over Evans, number 20 in the world. So how do you see Kokkinakis and some of the Aussies going over there in the French?
Yeah, it's very exciting. I tuned into a bunch of the matches last night, and Thanasi with a fantastic straight sets victory over Dan Evans. That was, quite an upset. So Thanasi's proved that he can play at that level, and he's made the third round once before at the French Open a few years back. And very much looking forward to more of the matches tonight. Alex de Minaur, our top-ranked Aussie, is first on. So that'll be at 7 p.m. tonight. Looking forward to that one. Storm Sanders also came through qualies and won last night her first round. So it's obviously a little disappointing that I'm here in Melbourne during the French Open, during one of the Grand Slams, but it just sort of fuels the fire for next year, where hopefully I can compete at the French again.
Yeah, for the people that are listening or watching, Luke, how's it all work? And are you close to getting a spot in the dubs or the singles for the French?
Yeah, it wasn't too far off. The doubles ranking currently sitting at about 85. So you need to be combined inside 150. So that's how the doubles works. And yeah, as far as the singles, you need to be inside about 230 these days to get in qualies. I'm around 415 at the moment. So still relatively early in my singles comeback. I've been out of the singles game for a few years now, and really enjoying sort of the second wave of my career, if you like. Very motivated to continue the singles journey. It's just hopefully I can continue to rise ahead of the grass court season in a couple of weeks.
And you've been pretty busy in recent times. Tell us about 2023, how it's all going, and what's been happening the last couple of months, because you've been all over the world.
I have, yeah. I've been travelling a fair bit this year so far. Obviously, I played the Australian summer to begin the year, and it went reasonably well. Alex Bolt, another proud South Aussie from Murray Bridge. We teamed up in the doubles at the Aussie Open and made third round. We knocked off, it was the number 4 seeds, the Croats, Mektic and Pavic. So that was another great experience for us and a really strong start to the year for me. From there, I went over to the States where I played a couple of events and on to Mexico for a month. So that was rather interesting. And then straight into South Korea. So yeah, definitely notching up the frequent flyer points, that's for sure, the miles. But very much enjoying it still. The travel's definitely a bit of a grind, but once I'm there, really loving the competitive aspect of tennis and very motivated to head over to the UK where I've had great memories. The grass court is definitely my favourite surface, coming from the Riverland in South Australia, of course. And we've got a lot of grass courts there, and I definitely feel very much at home on the grass.
And talk about the rest of 2023. Is there a possibility that you can play doubles over there at Wimbledon, or?
Yeah, that's the plan at the moment. I'm teaming up with Alex Bublik. So he's around 50 in the world. And I'm 85. So as I mentioned, if you're inside 150, that combined ranking, you'll be in. So yeah, it's looking like we'll get a game. Very excited for that. I'm playing a bunch of challenges on grass leading up to Wimbledon. So I feel like it's a really nice mix of singles and doubles. I feel very comfortable on the grass, as I just mentioned. And anytime you can play Grand Slams, obviously Wimbledon as well. It's just so prestigious. The traditions there are incredible, and had such amazing memories of Wimbledon as well. Winning junior Wimbledon there and qualifying 3 times in the seniors. So absolutely love it in the UK at that time of the year. Really hoping that Alex and we've never played with one another before. Hopefully we can combine well, which I'm sure we will. He's quite a flary player, and I feel like I'm more of a solid guy, and hopefully we can sort of build that chemistry in that sense. So looking forward to sort of the couple months coming up for me.
And let's go back to the junior days, because you mentioned before you grew up in the Riverland. Talk us through those early days, Luke, and who sort of gave you that influence to pick up a racket, and what age you were, and how you sort of first got into it. Yeah, tell us more.
Yeah, it was definitely quite a journey. I am one of 2 other siblings. I've got an older brother and sister, and 5 and 7 years older. So they really started playing, and basically with my parents, my father Mick and mother Judy, and they were sort of playing doubles. We had a court in our backyard, and I remember sort of jumping on the trampoline and watching them play doubles. And as soon as I could sort of sub in, it might have been sort of 4 or 5, I think, and I was in there. I think I took my mum out, and she retired from there. So yeah, my dad, he's an engineer, still going now, and so he built a hitting wall on our tennis court as well in our first house, my childhood house. And I was basically, as soon as I could walk, I was hitting balls up and down the wall. And I really feel like the hitting wall is very underrated these days. It's a great way to build sort of the hand-eye coordination for young kids, young boys and girls. So that's kind of how I started. And in the Riverland especially, there's such a strong tradition of tennis as well. All the small towns in the region have their clubs, and we play juniors, Saturday morning juniors against one another, and Saturday afternoon seniors. And basically I was playing juniors and seniors most Saturdays, and down the Cobby Club, Cobdogla, very small town there on the Murray River. And yeah, that's really how my journey sort of started from the age of sort of 7, 8, 9. We were starting to make trips up to Adelaide. It's 2.5 hours one way, so 5 hours return. And my parents are sort of taking in turns of taking me up to Adelaide sort of 2, sometimes 3 times a week around that sort of 8, 9 years of age mark. And I think it got to one day when my dad was, we're almost home, and he might have got a speeding ticket or something. And he basically just said, Luke, you and your mum have to go up to Adelaide and sort of continue the journey from there, because it was very tough on me, who was obviously, young and still in school, but very tough on my parents as well. It was long days and just not very sustainable. So we made the decision, the sacrifice to move to the city, move to Adelaide. And we were there from 10 to 16. I went to primary school and secondary school there at Prince Alfred College. Had a fantastic time in Adelaide for those 6 years, and then from there moved to Canberra, the AIS, Australian Institute of Sport, for 3 years till I was 19, and then been in Melbourne ever since. So that's a little bit about my journey.
And what was it like having older siblings as well? Pretty tough, in the backyard. I can imagine playing some pretty competitive games of cricket, basketball, tennis, that sort of thing.
I think so. Yeah. Like I mentioned, they're 5 and 7 years older. So there was definitely a point. There wasn't so much of a rivalry with my sister, Katie, but probably more my brother, Troy. He was obviously beating me up until a point. And I haven't thought about it too much, but I remember being a little bit frustrated. I couldn't get over the top of him for a while. But I got to an age where, it might have been sort of 12 and he might have been 19. But to be fair, I was playing full time and had, big aspirations, and Troy and Katie, both very, very equipped, very good tennis players for our region, but obviously didn't have the opportunities I did. So it got to a point where I started to knock my brother off, and that's probably when he stopped playing, to be honest.
It's so funny. I've got a younger brother as well, and I remember playing against him a few years ago, and he absolutely spat the dummy when I beat him, and didn't talk to me for about 3 or 4 hours. So I get that sibling rivalry, mate.
Absolutely. It's very, very strong, very real.
Oh, that's gold. And, growing up as well, who coached you, Luke, and who's your coach nowadays?
Yeah, I've had a bunch of coaches through the journey. Back in the early days in the Riverland, Mike Horsman, a shout out to him. He did a lot of work with me in my very young age, very junior years. And then when I went to Adelaide, Mark McMahon, Kylie Moulds, Graham Neville, Broderick Dyke. So all through those 6 years. And then yeah. Like I said, I probably had double digits of coaches throughout the journey, and all played a very strong part and unique part in my career, and my journey, and my development as a player. So and a person as well. So it was had a lot of coaches through there, and then currently I'm working with a very experienced coach by the name of John Trickey here in Melbourne. He's probably mid-60s, and he's been sort of around the game for probably 45, 50 years even. He played himself, and he worked in Germany for quite a while. He was based in Stuttgart, I think he was saying, and also working with a trainer here in Melbourne by the name of Mark McGrath. And we do a cross-section of work, and we sort of really look for the transfer from the off-court training in the gym onto the court. So we do a lot of work with that, and we've been working for at least 8 years. So he's been a real constant for me, and I think it's great to have those guys or girls in your corner, in your camp that are constants, because you've built that trust, and that's obviously very important to have those people on your team. And then John's kind of a little bit new, probably the last couple of years, but his experience and his knowledge have been fantastic for me.
And I've heard some interesting stories about Mark Woodford's dad, Ray, a bit of a fiery character in terms of a coach. Have you had some interesting coaches as well that get a bit fired up at you, Luke, or have they been pretty laid back?
Yeah, I've had a few. I'd like to think I haven't been too hard on my coaches. I've always sort of done what I've said, what I've been told, and I've always had a pretty solid work ethic and manners and all that sort of stuff from a pretty young age. I feel like my parents really instilled that in me. But yeah, there was some fiery ones early days in Adelaide, and probably my dad was the most fiery one, to be honest, out of everyone that's been involved. But yeah, my dad, he was very passionate, wore his heart on his sleeve, and I owe really the world to my parents. I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for them. They really sacrificed a lot for me to be here. So without them, I owe them the world, really.
Now, I want to ask you about the Australian Open. You made it through to the final with Max Purcell. That must have been a pretty amazing experience to play in an Aussie Grand Slam with a fellow Aussie in the final.
Yeah, that was crazy, to be honest. That was an absolute whirlwind. Very, I was going to say unexpected, but it was very unexpected. But we showed very strong form leading up to that for about a year. We were playing very well on the Challenger Tour, and we were winning so many challenges. I think we set the record at the time for 7 or 8 Challenger titles in a year in 2019. So we just hadn't had that opportunity at the top level, at tour level, at Grand Slams, to really show what we're made of. And we got a wild card that year in 2020. And yeah, really just, we got through our first round. We took out maybe the 6th or 7th seeds, Roger and Takao, second round. And really from there, the draw opened up a little bit. And, just match by match, the belief grew. And it's very funny. Tennis in general, but specifically doubles, there's so much momentum involved, and we felt like we gained the momentum in that tournament and really ran with it. And yeah, we had a pretty tough one in the final. Those guys play well, and Ram Salisbury to this day, 3.5 years later, are sort of the number one pairing in the world, and a very strong team to deal with. But that was a real eye opener that we have the level, Max and I, and we've stopped playing now. We've gone our separate ways. Maxi's doing great things on the singles tour, and I'm trying to join him as well. But that was probably one of my bigger achievements, and to do it here in Melbourne where I live and home Grand Slam, that was pretty awesome.
From memory as well, though, that might have been the only time, I think, when there was no crowds, though, wasn't it, in 2020? Was I correct? Because of the COVID situation?
No, so that was a normal year. It was 2021 where it was pretty quiet. Sort of the COVID started to swell around. Probably about a month after the Aussie Open, so early March, right. And that's when both tours sort of shut down for about 6 months during that 2020 year.
That's right. Yeah, you got in just before.
Yeah.
Exactly. And last year it would have been unbelievable as well, getting to make your Davis Cup debut. Tell us about that experience, Luke, and when you found out you'd be, making your debut for your great country.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. Team events in tennis is such an individual sport. So whenever you can represent something bigger than yourself in a team, and then especially your country, is absolutely incredible. And I hold that very high up in achievements and things to do in tennis. So, I felt like I'd been pressing. I'd been pressing on the door for probably a year or two since Max and I made that final at the Aussie. I feel like we were looking out for a doubles pair in Davis Cup. And I think finally when I got the call up from Leighton and he said I was gonna debut in March in 2022 last year. And I think he called me, sort of early February. It was very surreal, very surreal. It didn't feel real at all. I was in India, in Pune at the time. So doing it, it was doing it a little bit tough there, but got that call, and that was amazing news. And we didn't play our best match, Johnny Peers and I, because a couple months earlier we played very well in the ATP Cup in January. We'd had a few good wins and sort of a similar environment, playing for your country, playing for Australia, a lot of buzz, a lot of atmosphere in those matches. So didn't play our best, but unbelievable experience to get 113, 113th player, Australian player to represent Davis Cup. Absolutely incredible achievement for me. And I sort of wear my Davis Cup clothing around. Got my Olympic shorts on right now, so I bring it with me everywhere. And I hold those achievements very high for sure.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about that. You're representing Australia at the Olympics as well. That must have been pretty amazing buzz.
Yeah, it was. It was amazing in 2021, even though it was the 2020 Olympics, and a real strange Olympics. It's only been my first one, so I don't know how to compare to the others, Rio in 2016. But yeah, sort of no crowds, a very strict bubble there in Japan, and we weren't able to go to other sports. So a lot of restrictions still with the COVID at that time. So that was a little unfortunate, but still we went to the opening ceremony. We marched with them, and just to be part of the Australian Village as well. 450 athletes in that in our building for Australia. So yeah, really, really amazing memories of that week. When some of the swimmers or any of the athletes won a medal, I remember we would get worded up on when they were coming back, and we would build a sort of a guard of honor out the front, and we would welcome them back and sort of cheer, and just sort of that camaraderie that you have for your country and your team was, I've never been part of something like that. And then especially the swimmers, we went so well in that Olympics in the swimming category, and we had a big TV set up outside, and at night we were, getting around the finals, and that was just really cool, because you didn't know the guys or girls, but you really felt like you did, and we were really rallying around each other, and that's I guess that's the Olympic spirit. End of the day, it's pretty incredible.
And was there anyone there from, whether it be Australia or other countries, that left you starstruck, Luke, and it's like, oh wow, got to get a selfie with this athlete or something like that?
Yeah, a little bit. Paddy Mills floating around, that was very cool for me, and I think those boys took home bronze from memory. But the basketball guys, they were very funny. Yeah, there was sort of tables and chairs set up outside the village there, our sort of housing estate. And yeah, I remember sort of bantering with them most mornings. We're having coffee. We had our own barista from Australia out there, so making some nice coffees and just sort of just having breakfast outside with them. And yeah, I think it was Aaron Baines. He was getting drug tested one morning, and I saw him walk out. It might have been 7:30. I had an early practice session or something, and he was walking out with the drug tester in his boxers. So he didn't. He got woken up nice and early, but he didn't bother to put sort of any clothes on. So he was walking off to sort of the doping area. I kind of thought there was no other sort of basketballers there at that time, so I was thinking to myself, oh, that's pretty funny. But it was only me who sort of saw it. So I was just waiting there, and sure enough, some of the basketballers started to greet, and it's probably about an hour later, and I heard them sort of talking and laughing and stuff. And I think they got worded up that Baines was walking back sort of any minute, and sure enough, he started walking back. Same thing in his boxes, just a mask in his boxes, and he got greeted with a few sort of cheers and laughter, and so that was one of the funnier moments for sure.
And I got told as well, back at the Atlanta Olympics, they had about 9 McDonald's. Was that the same kind of thing in Tokyo as well?
Oh, I think that's changed a little bit. There was no Maccas there, but probably three sort of food halls, dining halls. One enormous one. I've never seen something so big in my life, and just sort of seeing all the other villages as well from all the other countries, all the flags set up, and it was very cool to be part of that for sure.
And let's talk about your lovely wife, Daria, formerly Daria Gavrilova, now Saville. Where did you guys first meet, and tell us about that experience?
We first met in the under-16s Junior Davis and Fed Cups in San Luis Potosi in Mexico. And it was sort of one of those things. I think we were both sort of 15 and 16, and we might have said hi, and that was about the extent of our exchange at that point. And sort of things sort of started to escalate a bit from there. And we met up at the following Australian Open a few months later, and started talking. But sort of early days in juniors and whatnot. It's obviously not too serious. I'm from Australia. She was still in Russia at that time, and we were playing some of the same events, but we weren't seeing each other really at all. And it probably got a lot more serious when we were about 19 and 20. And she moved out to Australia. She got her citizenship and she got her visa and started playing for Australia. And Nicole Pratt, who's currently still involved in Dash's tennis quite a bit, she really sort of, I guess, helped that process of getting Dasha to play for Australia and get that support. And then we sort of moved in together here in Melbourne and sort of been living together for about 10 years now. Got married 2 years ago. So it's been quite a journey, but it's been great having sort of your partner in the same profession as you, also in tennis, and we both know the ins and outs and sort of the hardships, and we can bounce ideas off one another. And when we don't see each other for quite a long period of time, we're kind of used to it because we've been doing it for almost 15 years now. So that's it's all part of it. But it's going pretty strong at the moment.
And who wins the games between you two? Do you have to give her a bit of a handicap, or you try and be nice to her? How does that work?
We would hit up and down the middle, we'd warm up, and then that's probably about it. We would definitely not get to the points part, the competitive part, because it just get too fiery. But she would. Let's just say she'd beat me in a forehand cross court rally. But if we open things up from there, she might struggle a little bit. But her forehand is definitely world class. I would say maybe top 5 forehands in the world. She's currently here training and rehabbing an ACL injury that she did last October. So her second ACL. So she's not too far off, and she's planning on playing Wimbledon.
Before we let you go, Luke, as well, always like hearing the stories about your fellow players that you play with, whether it be Aussies or some overseas guys. But who are the funny players on the circuit and why?
If we can stick with Aussies, our fellow South Australian Thanasi Kokonakis, he's quite a character. He's always great to sort of hang around with and banter with, and he just loves the center of attention. He loves the spotlight, the big fella, and if you just don't talk and just let him talk all day, he could be there for hours. But his coach as well, Todd Langman, he's a really good dude as well. And Gail Monfils, he's always a funny guy as well, and a real genuine nice guy. I hadn't seen him for quite a few years. Obviously he was injured, and him and Alina just had a baby as well, and I saw him recently, and it just we sort of caught up, and real sort of genuine guy. But in terms of a lot of the other Aussies, we're not too loud, we're not too exuberant, but whenever we get together on tour, there is great banter, and I think we've just built that for many years because we have to sort of stick together. We're a long way away from the States and Europe, and we've got to do long stints. And I think if you just sort of hang, by yourself in your hotel room and whatnot, it can be quite lonely, and the days and weeks can sort of drag along a bit. So the banter is very strong amongst a lot of the Aussies, and we all get along very well. So I think that's very pleasing to know that all the Aussies have got your back. It's sort of great when you get out on tour with them.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Sports Legends with Bevo today, Luke. Thanks so much for your time, mate, and all the very best for the rest of 2023 for yourself and also for Daria as well.
Thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate having me on. That was good fun. Thank you.